All right, good morning. Happy Tuesday, Tangled Tuesday. Like the hair, pretty tangly up there. I hope I can comb it out later. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you guys. You're gonna be horrified by all the tabs. Oh, we got some more friends coming in. Excellent. Okay, so today's assignment, we're practicing our argumentation skills. So you're going to complete just an argument outline. So you don't need to actually be writing any paragraphs or anything like that today. The most thoughtful thing you're going to be writing is a thesis statement and some transition sentences. Okay, so overall, we're going to be talking about this idea of artifice. And artifice is kind of like the idea of being fake, or kind of like being clever in the way that you're able to trick people or put on a show for people, kind of manipulate people almost. So we're going to read the argument prompt together, which is about artifice, and then you're going to create an outline for a full essay. So your outline is going to include a couple of things. It's going to include a thesis statement that addresses the prompt. You need at least 3 pieces of evidence to come up with from history or current events. Personal experience doesn't really like apply as much to this prompt, but maybe some of you are kind of creative, maybe it could. And then you're going to come up with the transition sentences between your pieces of evidence, and that's just so we can still work on this line of reasoning, making sure our whole ideas connect with one another. Okay, other than the outline, there is one other thing you're going to be doing, not just because I miss our class discussions, but we are going to have a little virtual discussion about the topic. So your post for this doesn't need to be very long, just a sentence or 2, 3 at the most, I said. Don't feel like you have to do too much for the discussion. But essentially, you're either going to answer the question, build on somebody else's answer to the question, you can disagree with somebody, you can ask somebody a question about what they said, or you can ask a follow-up question. So you've got 5 different options about how you can contribute. But this is just to kind of bounce ideas off each other. It's not, supposed to be like a lot of extra work for you. You can do that before you do your outline if you want to just start getting some ideas in motion, or you can do it after you complete your outline if you want to think through stuff first. It's totally up to you, whichever order you want to do it in, but they're both essentially about the same topic. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the prompt here. Are you guys all in the document with me too?
Oh, shoot.
You guys all see it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so remember, argument's the one where we come up with our own evidence here. Okay, so the passage below is an excerpt from Empire of Illusion by Chris Hedges. Read the passage carefully, then write an essay in which you develop a position on Hedges' argument that the most essential skill is artifice. Okay, use appropriate, specific evidence to illustrate and develop your position. So again, it kind of sums up the passage for you. The most essential skill is artifice. Again, artifice just being this ability to kind of trick people, deceive people, kind of being fake and that sort of thing. Okay, so he says the most essential skill in political theater and a consumer culture is artifice. Political leaders who use the tools of mass propaganda to create a sense of faux intimacy with citizens no longer need to be competent, sincere, or honest. They need only to appear to have these qualities. Most of all, they need a story, a personal narrative. The reality of the narrative is irrelevant. It can be completely at odds with the facts. The consistency and emotional appeal of the story are paramount. Those who are best at deception succeed. Those who have not mastered the art of entertainment, who fail to create a narrative or do not have one fashioned for them by their handlers, are ignored, become unreal. An image-based culture communicates through narrative, pictures, and pseudo-drama. So I just want to talk about the prompt a little bit with you guys, and maybe get a couple initial reactions. So Hedges here is really just arguing that, like, to be successful in politics, you don't really have to be honest or any. You actually shouldn't be honest. You shouldn't be sincere. You should really just have this skill of being able to kind of put on a show. And I'm just wondering, what are your initial thoughts on that? Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? What do you think? Alonzo, start us off. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second and chat with you guys, and then we'll come back to it. But yeah, what do you guys think so far?
I mean, it's a lot of like TV shows tend to like exhibit this process of showing these qualities rather than actually having them, and kind of people like act in front of a camera rather than in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. But we're thinking particularly in the realms of like politics. So think about over the course of history, any like famous leaders you know of, or even like you guys have a lot of current knowledge of, like, even if you don't know a lot about politics, like, you know, these figures that are in the spotlight. Do you think that it's more important that they're honest or sincere, or do you think that like they really need to have this ability to put on a show and to sort of like create and themselves to get people to like them?
Well, I think.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, Alonzo, you're good. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, some presidents, multiple presidents from the past, they have tried to like, they use Artifice in some way to like sound more appealing, actually like gather the support of people because they're sounding like the way that people want them to sound.
Right.
But sometimes they might not really be honest. They just do it because that's how they really gather support. Sometimes, yeah.
They don't follow through with what they promise the people that they're gonna do, and then they say something that they're gonna want to do, and then they never follow through. I mean, there have been those few presidents, like you said, that have followed through, and those are the ones who actually get stuff done.
Right, and we're almost not even looking at if they actually get stuff done, just how do they even like gain that support? Because Hedges is really saying that, like, to get that support in the first place, you shouldn't really be honest, you shouldn't be sincere, you need to be able to like kind of put on this image because it's this popularity contest and like kind of making people buy into your story and who you are, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
You agree with
That's
that?
it. Yes. Life is selling yourself.
Yeah.
Life is marketing. This is not just politics. It's everything you do. If you're trying to apply for a job, you're not going to go there dressed in PJs with my hair for crazy hair day.
Right.
You're going to like want to go in there like composed and stuff. And whenever you're in like, the workplace in general, you're basically selling yourself to your employers. You're selling yourself to people that will hire you. You're trying to get ahead by presenting yourself in a certain way. And like this applies to politics as well as all of life.
See,
So yeah, and it doesn't have to be dishonest.
In a thesis.
Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't have to be dishonest. Like I think people conflate the two of dishonesty and selling yourself, because I could honestly sell who I am, and that's a nuance for you guys, I guess.
I was just gonna say that's nuance. Wow, we're getting. Well, I hope people watch this video after we post it because they'll get some good ideas. You know. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, you know, we're gonna have to create this outline for an argumentative essay. So again, you don't have to like actually write a full essay, but we need to think of some concrete examples here. You guys have any good examples from like history classes, whether it's, you know, like world history, big relevant leaders, or do you have, like, I know you guys have all been in US history this year, you've learned about lots of different past presidents and politicians like that. Do you have any like good examples you think might apply to this argument?
Well, I don't remember which one because I'm terrible with names, but I remember one of the presidents
I think it
was in a wheelchair, and he didn't like the camera being like below his, like being pointed below his chest, because he wanted to put on a show that he was capable rather than disabled.
That's FDR.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, FDR.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
very good example.
I suck at names, so
No,
I mean,
well, and remember, this isn't a test. This isn't on the fly, so you can always like double check your notes from history or anything like that to come up with any other historical examples you think you guys could think of.
Andrew Garfield.
Ooh,
You know, I think so. He was the dude who got assassinated because he was supposed to appoint someone, and he promised someone a spot in the cabinet, but then he didn't, and he was just trying to like put on a show for like them to like support him, and then when it came time to, he didn't appoint the dude to the cabinet.
Mhm.
he
I don't know if
appointed
that's
somebody else. He
right. And
appointed.
then,
So do you think he might
Um,
be more of an example for like the other side of the argument, like needing to be honest and stuff like that, because his artifice didn't really
oh
work,
right.
maybe? What other like big famous historical people were really good at kind of like gaining support by like using propaganda or artifice or things like that? What do you guys think?
Hitler.
There you go.
Hitler, yeah. Uh,
Again,
He
not
used
necessarily a positive example, but
not a positive example, but he used so much charisma and so much propaganda in his up and coming. That's how he gained the entire support of Germany, the entire German population. Remember, this guy wasn't even German, and the dude he was turning them against, he, he, he was turning them against Jews, and he was Jewish himself, and he wasn't even German. He was from Austria, and he still had the charisma and the propaganda and the support, so-called, behind his arguments that it convinced people to support his cause.
well, and you know, like Hedges talks about this idea of a story, right? Created this story like, oh, let's blame Jewish people for our problems, like they're the enemy, they're the reason, you know, like he created a lot of narratives and things like that.
we could even say like dictatorship in like general, like any dictator.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think too, if you're going to use dictatorship as part of your examples, I would make sure it's not your only example throughout your essay. I would kind of move, like if you think about, you're going to have 3 different examples, maybe like one of them is dictatorship, then one of them is kind of more democratic, whatever, just so you can kind of show a balance, not only in like this sort of evil, because a dictatorship is like evil, right? It's bad. But it still applies, or at least Nate was saying it still applies in a democracy as well. So you want to kind of be. All right, we can come back to historical examples in a little bit, but what do you guys think about in terms, I feel like there's a lot more current, I mean, think of all the recent presidents, current president, or even you guys have this knowledge of like people running for president right now, you know what I mean? What do you guys think about those examples?
Honestly, I wasn't here like when you were talking about like the passage.
Mm-hmm.
What were the 2 sides again?
Do you have the prompt page open, Victor?
Let me get it up.
So go ahead and open it up. But it's about this idea of artifice, which means like people don't have to be sincere. They don't have to be truthful. They need to have the ability to like manipulate people almost and like put on a story.
Oh, okay.
They don't actually have to be genuine. They just have to be good at telling themselves. So how do you think that might apply to like Obama or Donald Trump or even Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, some of the people running today? Like, do you feel like you guys have any thoughts on how those people fit into the situation?
I feel like Donald Trump definitely has to like try to prove himself because he's been put in like such a bad spot as of right now. Seeing that he almost got impeached or withdrawn, he didn't get impeached, but so I feel like he really has to put on like a. I mean, I don't know if he actually being honest, but from looks of it, it would seem like he would have to be honest to cover up his mistakes. That makes sense. You know what I mean?
Kinda.
I'm not explaining.
What do the rest of you think? Do you think that Donald Trump would
An
be
example, because we're talking.
what's up, Nate?
An example of it. I guess so, because he hasn't been honest traditionally necessarily in his candidacy, but people like him because he seems to be honest in your face. He like he grossly exaggerates things sometimes. And that's like just one of his traits, I guess. But so he does display artifice that we've seen. I think a good example of the idea of selling yourself is, let's focus on the Democratic primaries. We had two people I want to focus on. We had Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg. And Elizabeth Warren had like tons of prestige. She was a woman, so she had that going for her. She was like a governor, she was a senator. So she already had this like huge base. But she kind of choked the latter half because very unappealing as a person and
You're kind of cutting in and out. Is that
and
just
then
for me?
on the other, Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, that's me too.
Nice, kind of.
Yeah,
We're
you
cutting.
guys are cutting out, but I was able to hear all of Dur said.
But I really like that Nate's bringing up these two different examples of like maybe where people have fallen short because they don't have enough of that skill of artifice. You know, is that kind of what you were saying, Nate? About Warren and Buttigieg? They weren't
Yeah.
enough of that skill of being able to sell the story. Whereas kind of like how Abdur was saying, and Nate was saying too, Donald Trump, he painted this whole narrative like, we're gonna make America great again. And like he was able to really like rally people with this story of like, I'm not a traditional politician, like I'm not correct, you know, he was able to really like use that story he created to really like gain support and gain what about Obama? Do you guys feel like he created a story?
True. I feel. I mean, I haven't seen nothing bad. I mean, I would have to do more research, but from what I know to what he did, seemed pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not to say that like artifice is a bad thing on its own. It's just kind of saying like, do you have to kind of this idea of like selling yourself or creating? Like Nate said, we kind of all do that to an extent. If we like go into an interview or something, we're not gonna just like act the most genuine way how we would act.
I mean, you should though. You should though. Like it should be like you act like yourself. So because not only are you putting like the business in effect, like if you actually don't act like that, then you're gonna experience conflict within that business. So it's like you kind of have to. I mean, show your real self.
Yeah.
I mean,
I see a thesis of Abdur for the other side. I like it.
that's crazy. I mean, in our society, it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Do you guys want to talk about anything more at all or ask any questions before we kind of go back to the task then? I just wanted you to kind of like be able to talk through the prompt together, start to get some ideas, that sort of thing. Any other thoughts before we go back?
I feel like what Ariel said in the chat when she said, I think Obama utilizes artifice a lot on social media. I feel like a lot of presidents have done that, including like our current one, like Donald Trump. Like I know his is pretty big, especially on Twitter. And I feel like he's very real and honest about his like own opinions and everything.
He is.
Yeah.
Even on social media, it kind of helps create this story.
There was this one where he was like, so the interviewer asking him, why do you call this the Chinese virus? And then he's like, because it's from China. And then so that was like, okay, true.
Right.
Like that's
So part of Trump's like image that he's created for himself is, I'm going to be blunt. I'm not going to hold anything back. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything.
Yeah.
That's part of that image he's created for himself. And some people love that, right? Other people don't like it. But some people really like that, like he doesn't sugarcoat stuff. And yeah, kind of interesting. But I really like how Alex and Ariel also brought up the other side. Obama, who was very well liked by people, had a different kind of story he created for himself, but he still used artifice, right? He created this like narrative of, we want change, I'm something different, this is positive, we're progressing forward, which was a great narrative to have, a lot of people might think. But we're still kind of seeing this idea of creating artifice, although Abdur is going to disagree, and I love it. It's all about being real and genuine, right, Abdur?
right.
Yeah. So you guys can totally argue either side, or Nate earlier brought up this kind of more nuanced claim, which is super cool. You can kind of do both at the same time. You can create this story while still kind of being true to who you are. You can think about that as well. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen with you for a second, just to kind of wrap up here, because I know Ms. Secor's A-Push stuff is going to start at 9:30. So now that we've kind of talked through the prompt, again, what you're doing is creating an outline. So I put a sample outline from an older prompt we had done, so you could just see kind of the expectations of what it should look like. You need to have your thesis as number one thing. Make sure it takes a stance on that prompt about artifice. So it should be a very clear position. Then you're going to want to have 3 pieces of evidence and the transition sentences to connect those. So you can kind of see in the example one, okay, Frederick Douglass was my first piece of evidence. I then had to connect that to my second piece of evidence, Sherman Alexie, and then I had to connect that to my first example. So you guys are going to do the same thing, but for the artifice prompt here. Okay, so you'll go ahead and create your mini outline. And then just so you can see separately here on Google Classroom is where you're doing the discussion board posts. Again, you can do that beforehand, or you could do it after. This one's just a quick comment to kind of what we just did here. We talked about it together, but I just want you to be able to have a virtual discussion with all of your classmates, so you'll just respond to that question. Okay. Do you guys have any questions or concerns?
No, not
All
really.
good?
Oh, good.
All right, well, I can't wait to see what you guys have to say in the discussion posts and kind of what ideas you come up with. So, yeah, that's all I got for you.
All right. Thank you, Miss Miller.
Of course. Have a great day, okay?
You too.
You too.
See you at 1 for office hours if you need help, okay?
Cool.
Okay, bye.